So to find the domain and range of C, it's much more complicated because we've got lots of things going on. So we're first going to start off with f of g of x, which we already established. And so I've drawn it here to the left. So that function there represents f of g of x. And when we look at the domain of this, well, there's nothing happening to the f of g of x in the function notation. So we can then establish the domain right away. It's going to be the same domain as f of g of x. So the domain of that was, we cannot input negative values into the log. So we're going to have x values that are greater than 0. Okay, so that represents the domain of that function. It's the domain of the same domain as f of g of x. To do the range, we have to look at the transformation. So first of all, the transformation is going to be a vertical expansion of 2, which I've shown here in red. But it also gets shifted down 1. So when I shift this down 1, let's take this graph, I'm just going to shift it down 1. Okay, so now when we look at this, the bottom of this function is going to be at -3. The top of this function is going to be at +1. So that's our new domain, our new range. And then we apply the absolute value to that. So if we apply an absolute value to that function, what ends up happening is we end up, all the parts are going to be above the x-axis. So it's going to kind of go up. The point down here, the min point, is going to end up being a max point. Just going to bounce back up to the max point, and all the zeros, it's just going to hit the zeros, and all our min points are going to be our max points. Okay, so then our range becomes, based on that graph, the range ends up being y is greater than or equal to 0. And then because the bottom of the graph ended up at -3, the top of the graph ends up at +3. So the range of that new function becomes 0 to 3.